I can barely fit this thing into the frame. So this is the first of my videos talking about the machines that I own, and I'm going to talk about them more from a personal point of view rather than just talk about the specifications, because that sort of thing has been done before and it's pretty boring, I think. So this is my original Amstrad CPC 464, and in a way it's not really mine because my dad bought it. I think it might have been about 1988 when he bought this. I was very young at the time. I was 4 years old, if I remember correctly, and I absolutely loved it. Now I do actually have quite a lot of hardware that comes with this now. So let's have a look at some of the add-ons that we have for this. So first of all, this is the modulator, and all this does is let you plug your Amstrad into a TV. And the reason why you need one of these is because the Amstrad would normally come with its own monitor, and I guess that was quite expensive, and people might just want to plug it into their own TV. So this become an option later on, and this come with our Amstrad. I don't use it anymore because I have better options now, and it produces a pretty bad picture actually. Another thing I have, which I did buy fairly recently, is I suppose this was a bit of a luxury thing for people at the time, but this is just an extra 64 kilobytes of memory which plugs into the back of the computer. I use this only for a very few games that require it, or games that are enhanced with the extra memory. This isn't necessary for some other models of Amstrad CPC because they actually come with 128K of RAM anyway. This is the Amstrad external disk drive. Now I think this is available straight away when the Amstrad was released, but it was, I guess, pretty expensive, and we didn't get one until a lot later on. And I think we only had, at the time, we only had 2 floppy disk games, and we had a couple of magazine cover discs as well. But the main thing we did with this, and I'll show you this other device, what we used to do is we used to use this, the Multiface 2, so this would plug into the back of your Amstrad, and then the floppy disk drive would plug into this. And what you could do once you'd loaded up a tape game is you could press the stop button, and that would basically break into the memory of your computer, and you could just dump whatever's in memory onto a floppy disk as a kind of a save state, and then you could load up your tape games from disk. Unfortunately, you did have to have this plugged into it to load up the games as well, and that could cause a few problems because having, if you can imagine, having lots of different things plugged into the same port in the back of your computer at the same time, it makes it less reliable. So I do remember having quite a lot of trouble loading up games at times. So that's all the hardware. So what about the games? Amstrad themselves published games just to make sure there was a good variety of games available at the launch of the machine, and they all came under the Amsoft label, and they were all in cassettes like this, but also on disc as well, but I don't have any of those. And in fact, when my dad bought the Amstrad, it came with a box of about, I think it was about 30 games, which was pretty good value for money. I only dug out a couple of them here, and to be honest, I think some of these were ones that we bought later on. But there's no screenshots of the games on the back, so there was no way of really knowing what the game was like. But we played quite a lot of these, quite a lot at the time. There was still lots of fun to be had. And yeah, there was quite a few board game conversions as well. Sometimes games would come in a variety of different packaging. So some games came in these little clamshell cases. So let's just have a look at this. This game of the movie The Goonies. Tiny little instructions there. What's this? A hint sheet. Okay. That's some of the screens you'll see in the game, of course. But then full-priced games would often come in these double-sized cassette cases, and obviously we bought this one second-hand for £2. I think I did a video of this a few years back. It's not a very good game. XOR, which is a really, really difficult puzzle game with massive scrolling mazes to get through. Well, at least this one has some screenshots on it, but I very much doubt they're actually Amstrad CPC screenshots. Although they could be. They could be. That could be from the Amstrad version. I do have two cassettes here, but this game is only one cassette. I just happen to have two copies of the game. The game series that I liked the most as a child was the Dizzy series. And I think I have all of the Dizzy games that are available on the Amstrad now. And they would often come in these very standard Codemasters cassette cases. And often Amstrad games would be the orange games. You see there. And the cassettes are almost always the same. Although this one has a paper label on it. And this one is a white cassette. And then this game, which I think might be one of the very last games that was released for the Amstrad. Well, that's not even straight, is it? I did mention that at the time I only had 2 disc games, and these are the 2 disc games that we bought. And obviously we bought these after we bought the disc drive. Now, you can see there, that is almost £17. So disc games were a lot more expensive than tape games, and the vast majority of them were almost exactly the same. So really all these before would be if you had a preference, if you really only wanted to buy disc games, or if you had a model of computer that only had a disc drive. But there's not really much special about these apart from the much quicker loading times. But there were a few games that were released only on disc because they were just too big, like French adventure games or such. There was also games that came in the same sized little boxes, but they weren't disc games, they were tape games. So there's this one, which cost us £4 at the time. I think it was probably second hand. This came out after the cartridge version. You can see there, 1991. This one, which is a bit of a special one actually, because it has this Spectrum version of the game and the Amstrad version on the same cassette, which is a pretty clever idea actually. I don't think that game ever did come out, did it? I was going to do a video of that game, but it's absolutely shocking, so I never did in the end. There isn't a two-player mode. I don't know why they advertise that. Another Dizzy game, and this time this cost me £10. It's got a very nice standard Codemasters cassette, but unlike other Codemasters releases, it comes with a few little extras. It comes with a few extras. It comes with a nice poster, some stickers, and a couple of little collector's cards. I think I did a video of this a few months back, actually, so you've probably seen all this before. What we used to do, we used to go down to this little shop in Norwich, a little privately owned computer game shop, and we would just pick up tons and tons of very cheap cassettes. I don't know how much this would have cost, but you can see here it says that it's the Amstrad version. The cassette says it's the Spectrum version. This is actually the Amstrad version of the game. When you load it up, it says it's a preview copy. But it's just something that we bought in a shop. It's not a particularly great game. Now, we did buy quite a lot of magazines, and we ended up with quite a lot of cover tapes. And what I used to really like about these cover tapes is that they would always have an option. You can see at the bottom here, they always had an option to transfer it all to a floppy disk. So the first thing we'd do is we'd load it up, and on the menu we'd select transfer to disk, and then you'd never have to use the tape again. And some of these came really late. You see there, that is a September 1994 cover tape, And that is a long way after people stopped actually making games for the machine. And so if you're transferring these to floppy disk, then you'll obviously end up with a lot of floppy disks. So let's see what we've got here. Amstrad Action Pack 8. And on this side, Amstrad Action Pack 5. So it doesn't say what's actually on there, but that would probably be maybe a demo and then 2 full games on one side of a floppy disk. Now lastly, some games came in bigger boxes. So in fact, all 3 of these are all those 3D Freescape games, which came in boxes, and my dad really liked playing these at the time. Oh, that's upside down. Okay. So of course there would be a little bit more to it. Oh, look at that, that's all the story. I think these also came with a little cardboard planet that you could kind of make up that would also act as the map of the game, but we've lost that over the years. So that's something to give you a little bit more sense of value for money, but essentially the game is just a game on a tape. And my 2 copies of Lemmings. So here we go. I have Lemmings on floppy disk, 1992. I do actually have the Spectrum version in here as well. And this other box is this one is the Amstrad cassette. That is the first of many different computers that I have.